Joining us is a man who is, well, his first time on The Observer. We want to say a special good evening to criminologist, Professor Ramesh Deosaran. A pleasant good evening, sir.
Good evening to you, Mikey, and your staff. It's my pleasure to help and join you on this important occasion.
Yes, indeed. It may be too late for me to say Happy New Year, but I do wish you all the best for 2024 and beyond. All the best, good health and financial prosperity, and definitely a peace of mind, as much as you can get.
Thank you. We all need peace of mind in this country now, as you know.
Yes, we do. Just taking you back a little bit, last year, beginning of the first quarter, you urged the authorities to take a different approach when dealing with young people involved in crime. And of course, this came after almost 40 young persons were arrested for serious crimes in the first quarter of 2023. Have you seen any sort of improvement? I mean, for a fact, we're living now in a times where, I mean, the elderly is at the most vulnerable state. People are afraid to leave their homes. Have you seen anything at all that you've asked the authorities that perhaps was implemented to show the seriousness of dealing with this situation?
That's the difficulty, because the ministers, for example, from the Prime Minister come down, they are aware of the problem. What I don't think they recognize in a demonstrative way is the complexity of the problem. Crime is not a one-shot thing, and that includes youth crime. I have been focusing on the education system as an output system, because the question is, where do these young people come from? Certainly, Mike, they didn't drop from the sky. So you look at how it is socialized, and you have the different institutions responsible for that. The primary one, in my view, I know parents, they will say parents, but in my view, in terms of changing behavior, detecting deviance, and so on, and the whole analysis and the ability and resources to restore them towards the right path is the education system. So when, as we have recently been hearing, the education system, you might say it's failing because there are hundreds of dropouts over a period, and then hundreds of young boys and girls are failing to score above 30% in the SEA examination. So if you look at those kind of examples, it tells you what the output is going to be. And the output from education system in those respects provide the input into gangs and criminality of different kinds.
All right, so let me just interject. So you've been saying for quite a while now that the signals are always there. These red flags are always up. But have we evolved to the point of understanding how our lifestyle has changed? I mean, many of us grew up in a home where there was a support system. You had aunts and uncles and perhaps elder cousins. But now when you look at what has taken place, so many women are on the workforce. So many of them go out there trying to carve out a living. And it's a lot harder now to just simply say, listen, parent, this full responsibility is on you without any help, without any support whatsoever.
I know that, Mike, but I have to be practical. I understand what you and other people are saying, but it is very difficult to tackle the problem domestically, because you rightly said women are going out to work now. The parents we have today have come through the same dysfunctional education system I'm talking about. So they lack the conscientiousness and the moral commitment to do the kind of parenting we're talking about. So I am saying, if you go down that route and hope for results, you will not likely get it in the near future. You'll be chasing after a ghost, because the parents themselves, especially single mothers today, I mean, we have never had so many single mothers in the way that they have been gathered over the years. Then you have the missing husbands. You have a woman with 4 or 5 children telling the press she wants help, but nobody asking about the husbands. We have to keep asking, where are the husbands too, apart from just looking at the single mother. So if you go that route, Mike, it'll be very difficult to find results. It is more practical to get results in the schools, because you could, if you have good teachers, they could reform the minds of these young people, make them responsible, tell them about respect, let them have a good way of living and so on. But And that is why I'm choosing the school before the parents. And whatever the argument is really a moral one in terms of parent first. I know that. But you have to be practical in what is possible and not what is idealistic. So that's why I'm chasing after the school system. And I think the teachers union should recognize this responsibility apart from industrial relations matter. But they ought to buck up now and serve the country in the way it needs to be served. And it's not a job. Teaching is not a job. Policing is not a job. It's a profession that needs conscience. It needs passion. So I think we are losing the ball in terms of serving the country with respect to these professions.
All right, and basically what you're saying, that there are teachers who may, of course, think, listen, I am just going to work hard enough to remain hired and good enough not to be fired. I have a job. I don't need this added responsibility of having to deal with an individual who simply does not know, it doesn't seem to understand right from wrong. Sort of behavior that I definitely didn't sign on for. How then do we make that connection to understand that, one student is more than enough when it comes to falling through the cracks? I mean, we heard the Prime Minister mention in the heights of the pandemic that 2,000 of our students fell through the cracks. Now, we don't know where they ended up. Did they end up in Raymond Yard? Did they end up choked out on a pool of blood on the side of the road? Where did they end up on the workforce? We simply do not know. And we can't have a culture where our children are just falling to the sidelines and we simply say, well, you win some, you lose some.
Oh, you're correct. And that is the tragedy. That's why I said earlier on, Mike, that crime is a complex problem. Because the question of cause and effect, whatever is the cause today was also the contributor yesterday. So there's cause to cause to cause. I mean, if you look at what you call a lifestyle, it's different, and it's very, very different, and it's not in an optimistic way.
But let me ask you something, Professor Deosaran. How then, as a society, we separate the behavior from the individual? Or have we passed that? Have we crossed that line? Because at some point in time, this was once Mommy Nice Child. This was a good child. This was a child that understood, listen, you wake up in the morning, you say your prayers, you say good morning, you see elderly people, you give them that respect. How then does that transformation come about from Mommy Nice Child to where many will now define as a monster? Get rid of them, take them out. I don't care what you do. We just simply don't want to deal with them. Where are we dropping the ball with making the connection that we have a responsibility?
Well, the ball, in my practical view, has been dropped many, many years ago. We have never had so many daycare centers, so many institutions looking after children, child abuse. Look at all the homes. We never had so many children homes for juvenile homes in our history. Look at our juvenile center of Orange Grove. It's been packed, and there's a lot of overturning. So if you look at how we're catering for the young people who have become deviant, that is a measure of how far we have come down the road. Now, I am not quite optimistic unless we start putting things in place and having people responsible for the behavior, not only the children, but you have to get the workers in all these institutions responsible too. And they're not responsible. It's one excuse after the other when you listen to the Joint Select Committee meetings with these people facing questions. Everybody keep complaining about short staff. Everybody feels they don't have enough equipment. Even the police complaints authority say he doesn't have certain powers he needs. Everybody's complaining about their deficiencies. And I'm not being pessimistic, but I have to be, as a professional, very objective and and hold the bull by his horns. Call a spade. Otherwise, if you sort of dress it up and cosmetize it as public relations because the political parties want to win an election, they want to solve crime in 5 years. I heard an opposition member last week saying, if you put them in power, they will solve the crime in 6 months. What craziness is this? That's not the way to solve it. And that's another level, whether the politicians could deal with crime and solve it. But at every turn, the detection rate now is about between 12 and 15% in the murder rate. So 12 and 15% means you have about 85 or 90, about 90% of those who commit murder still roaming free. And they are recidivist murderers because they still circle around the country free as ever. and only 12% of their partners or murderers have been held. And this has been going on for a long time. Since 1990, the detection rate has deteriorated significantly, about 100%. Since 1990, where are the answers for this? Is it bad policing? Is it, as you say, lifestyle changes? Is it because the judiciary is not doing its work effectively? You see, there are two levels of policing, two major levels, investigate and arrest. The other level is detection and prosecution. And we're lapsing in those two levels.
All right.
Especially detection.
Let's look.
Detection is a full measure of police effectiveness.
Well, let's look at what the opposition is saying. The opposition leader made it quite clear that it's essential to note that the UNC has supported over 35 pieces of legislation in the last 9 years. Something that the government continues to ignore when trying to craft this narrative that the UNC does not support the government's legislative agenda in Parliament. Now this is basically can't be a statement as far as gaining political traction. These are facts. Is it that legislation is simply not enough or simply not working?
The legislation that is available in terms of gang warfare, in terms of the other aspects, white-collar crime, home invasion, they are laws. They are laws. The question is, the laws are not being implemented effectively. And we have a habit of putting one law upon another. And I think that's what the opposition is referring to, that there are so many laws already available and they are not being implemented effectively. And having another law for a similar purpose will not really help. You're just clogging up the system in the courts and wasting parliamentary time, as it were. So I don't know when the day will come when the politicians will reflect and sit down and admit their failures and get together to work towards the solutions required. Because the system we have, Mike, as you know, is a system of hostility. One wants the other one to lose. The other one wants the other one to keep. The other one wants to remain in power. And that is the war that we have in the politics. It is adversarial. Now, how you need a certain level of maturity to deal with that. That is, you combine, you cooperate when it's very essential, and you put the country before the party. Now, I don't know if we will reach that level, because, I mean, in a practical sense, that is now how the system will operate, because one is the opposition, one is the government, and they are not very friendly in terms of next elections. It's war in next elections, virtually. So how you deal with a system, and we're talking about constitution reform. Now, I am hoping that if you have constitution reform in the way it's supposed to be, that might heal some of the breaches. So I will wait and see on that. But right now, with the political system we have, adversarial as it is, there's not much hope of people getting together to deal with the common problems by putting the country interest before the party interest.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you. Now, the opposition leader also made it quite clear that changes have to be made in order for the government to show that they're serious about tackling this crime situation. One of the things she mentioned, of course, is dealing with the Minister of National Security, the Attorney General, a Commissioner of Police that's someone who basically was high on the merit list. When you hear these things, I mean, and we as citizens, we would definitely want the best persons there to do the job. Best competent, who's able to carry out and execute the job without having to question the ability and basically saying, why are they there?
Well, the way I come back to the political system again and the role of cabinet and the role of the prime minister in the context of what the constitution expects and says. You cannot get the best person now to do the jobs you refer to without having some element of political interference. Let's take the Police Service Commission nominations.
Right.
You could dance and sing all you want, all the expenses, hiring consultancies and so on, Mike. But look how it ends up. It ends up in the hand, in effect, in the Prime Minister's hand. And the Prime Minister, any Prime Minister, I'm not speaking about the present one, any Prime Minister on the present architecture of the Police Service Commission will choose somebody who we feel is loyal And that's what happened with whoever was in the first in the list or last in the list. That is the criterion being apparently used. And if, with that system, you don't put merit, ability first. Loyalty is the first ring in terms of political choice. And any prime minister would do that. I was a chairman of the Police Service Commission once.
Right.
And can't divulge the meetings I have had. I have had meetings at, with Prime Minister, with everybody, in terms of carried out by function. And I got a sense, and I also knew Prime Ministers before this, the 2010 or 2015 one. And it's the same message you get, And sometimes you can't blame them because national security and so on, a very serious business. And you don't want to put somebody there who will jeopardize government policy or perhaps put the country at risk for some selfish reasons or some kind of partnership with the drug agencies and so on. And I think that was Rowley was entering into. I don't know how successful he would eventually become because the matter is in the court. He has some information about a certain police commissioner and so on. And even now, we heard something about the appointment of the three people to be deputy commissioners of police. But there's a previous senior officer who gave a letter which says that somebody was compliant with covering up something. So all it suggests to the public that the system is not working. And if Ms. Prasad Bisesa wants something like that, well, let's have put her foot forward and say we want to reform the Police Service Commission. She has been complaining about this for many, many years. So has the Prime Minister. That is one example. But they're not moving an inch to change the system. So we all looking at this scenario like it's a circus. And we keep recycling the same problem, the same issues, the same debate in Parliament, if you trace it. And I have been tracing this thing with the Police Service Commission, with the need for campaign finance reform. And they all speak about it, but nobody trying to make a bold effort because they have some interest in keeping it as it is, perhaps.
Yeah. It brings to the point now where you have to ask yourself, all that you've laid out, what chances do we as citizens have? I mean, we just can't be sitting ducks. I don't believe at the end of the day it's all doom and gloom. Is it the fact that there are people who just don't have the political will to go out there and put things in place to protect the citizenry?
The doom and gloom doesn't come from the people. The people have been voicing their concerns all the years. The doom and gloom possibly comes from the politics. That's how the politics are. That is weed and log jam, as it were. I mean, and I'm trying to disengage the politicians from behaving in the way that they do.
Well, let me ask you this, Professor. Is it that it is so highly politically influenced now that, there's simply no coming back to it? I mean, has there been so much influence? I mean, before one would think, well, it may be just a silhouette of a political hand playing out. But basically what we're seeing is that all of these so-called independent bodies and offices have been compromised to some level.
Yes. Well, I don't want to be overly pessimistic, Mike. But what else can I say when the evidence keeps staring me in the face? I have argued through my column and interviews with Ria Tate and a number of other people, for example, about reforming campaign finance, which holds a lot of implications for white-collar crime and other related crimes, over and over. Nobody listens. Nobody seems to take up the issue as a matter of moving from public opinion to public policy. This country, it seems like the politicians don't have great respect for public opinion because the way they are entrenched in their position. So I believe they disregard public opinion. In this respect, in the campaign finance issue, as well as the Police Service Commission, and in other respects. So how much can you talk? What can you do? If you vote them out, I don't know if you will get a better system. I am not too sure about that yet. Maybe later on, a year or so, it will be clearer. But right now, I think we all, both sides apparently, now realizing what is happening, I hope, because the opposition is holding its crime talks. The government side now is now trying to retool itself in different ways. So maybe that's where the light of the tunnel is. In about a year's time, we might see some improvement.
Yeah. In the meantime, I mean, just today, we're already in 67, almost 70 murders for the year, and we haven't crossed the first quarter of 2024. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, the good thing that the police commissioner and maybe the government and national security minister could say is that, well, last year around this time it was 95. And now it's about, let's say, 65. So there seems to be some improvement, and I don't know if they want to catch that rainbow in the darkness and say, well, listen, things look improving. Because last year, this time, we had 95 murders, and now we have 65. I'm afraid to use the words only, because already 65 within the 2-3 months, that in itself is too much. But relatively speaking, that might be a good sign. But I hope for more. I hope for more. And I wish the government could listen to public opinion now and do what is right for the country. I don't know if that conscientiousness will arise in political parties, that they must learn now, at this hour of crisis in terms of crime, to try and put the national interest before winning the next elections.
All right.
And that will help them, in fact, to win elections, whichever side does that.
Thank you so much, Professor Deosaran. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be checking in with you periodically on these issues. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Okay, Mike, thank you.